This is a production breakdown of Street Spirit, which is a Radiohead cover. Again, I'm going to go through each track, talk about what I did, show the sound design and how I mixed everything. So I'm going to start, first of all, since I last posted it on my blog, I've added a longer intro to it, which I'll show now. So that's the intro I added. I just did that by doing a broken chord, it's the first chord of the lead, making it gradually slow down. Then I reversed the sound of the pad and added an impact after that. Like that, and then I used this impact sound which I found online. Did that again over here, and also automated some reverb and filter on the lead. So I'll show you that. This is the dry signal as it comes in at the end of the intro. The dry goes all the way up. And then I also do the opposite with the wet. So it's the most reverbed at the start, and then when the actual song comes in, the reverb turns off. And there's also a filter doing a similar thing. The cutoff goes to 100 as the intro ends. I also re-recorded the vocals because since originally I did it with an SM58 with no pop shield, the proximity effect meant that there was a lot of low end, and EQing that just made the vocals sound really thin. So I re-recorded that with a Warm Audio 47 and a Scarlett audio interface. And I chose that mic because since it's a large diaphragm condenser, it's very sensitive, making it way better for vocals in a studio than an SM58. And I also wanted to add overdubs and harmonies. So now I'm going to go through the mixing of each track. I'm going to start with the lead vocal, which I'll show without any effects.
Rows of houses all bearing down on me. I can feel their blue hands touching me.
So the first thing I did was I EQ'd it, got rid of the low end, had a slight cut to 250 Hz since it was sounding a bit muddy there, and then boosted around 5 to 6k just for some clarity. And then I put that through some pitch correction with the response quite high, just for some minor pitch adjustment. Then I compressed it with iZotope Neutron with these settings. 4:1 ratio, the attack on 10 and the release on 600. So it compresses quite quickly, but then it stops compressing quite slowly. And I did this to make the vocals a lot less dynamic, because as you can see, especially on the chorus, it gets a lot louder. And then I used a console EQ with these settings, low cut at 244 Hz to get rid of any more low end, low gain at 5.2 decibels, low frequency at 220 Hz, mid gain at 3.8 decibels for some warmth, mid frequency at 3.2 kHz, and then I didn't add any high gain because I'm also using fresh air and it'd get a bit too bright. And then I used a de-esser because the sibilance was very strong on this vocal take. and the S's were at around 4,500 Hz, so I did that there just to reduce them. Then I used Valhalla Vintage Verb with the mix at 47%, pre-delay at 31 milliseconds, decay 3.8 seconds. So this is quite a lot of reverb on this vocal. So I did bass cut, and yeah, these are the settings for the reverb, and then used fresh air on top of that, the mid air at 18 and the high air at 38. And then this whole vocal chain altogether sounds like this.
Rows of houses all bearing down on me. I can feel their blue hands touching me.
But I automated the mix on the reverb to go down once the first verse comes in, just because it was sounding a bit crowded on the verse with the reverb as high as it is on the intro. And then there's also harmony parts which are overdubbed on every other line, and there's also a harmony on the chorus. I'll show what that sounds
Houses all bearing down on me. I can feel their blue hands.
And this is basically the same vocal chain, except I did a noise gate because there was some background noise, and also there's less fresh air on this one because I didn't want them both to cut through as much. And also used Valhalla Future Reverb instead of Vintage because there's a lot more reverb on the backing vocal.
All bearing down on me.
This one's also a bit more saturated on the console EQ, just to add some character to the harmonies. And then this part also has the same vocal chain, and this is 2 takes which I've panned left and right for some wide harmonies on the bridge. I'll show that. These also have a limiter on them though, just because at the end it gets very loud and it was distorting a little bit. Then onto the lead. I'll show the serum patch for that. So yeah, this is the lead. It's 2 saw waves, one with a unison on 7, one with a unison on 2. And as you can see, it's quite detuned. And so is this one. The level's at 75 on this one, 60 on this one. And then there's this envelope and this LFO. You see I've automated filter cut off the A course pit and B course pit, and also added some warp, and also automated the EQ frequency. So also these are the effects used on it. This phase is turned off. The chorus wet is at 50% with these settings, rate at 0.08 Hz, and this is the EQ. Which, as you can see, the frequency's automated while it's playing. And then this is the same patch, but they have different EQ, just because it was sitting differently on the chorus since there's so many other instruments that come in. So I'll show the EQ settings for that. I used a graphic EQ for this instead of the console one, and this is the curve I used. Also added a little bit of drive to it so it'd cut through the mix a bit more on the chorus, and basically just added some high end, boosted around here and boosted the mids. And this guitar sound came from Odin 3, which is a guitar VST for gent music. And this is the EQ I did for it. I cut out the low end, cut around 250 Hz to stop it sounding muddy. Boosted the mids a little bit and cut around here to get rid of some of the kind of hissing from the distortion. And that sounds like this. And also layered this with another guitar playing power chords. And this one I cut the low end, scooped the mids a little bit, cut also around here because of the hissing, and also boosted the high end a bit to make it cut through. And those two sound like this together. And then this guitar on the verse was recorded with an M Audio interface and a Fender Squier Telecaster. I used this Logic amp with these settings. And on the pedal board I used a reverb, chorus and an echo with these settings. I was going for kind of a post-punk sort of guitar tone like this. For the EQ I cut the low end, cut around here, boosted the mids and cut the high. And I also compressed it using the Studio VCA. The threshold at -18.5, ratio at 3:7, makeup gain at 0, attack at 20 milliseconds and release at 100 milliseconds. Because I still wanted it to sound quite natural and not too compressed. And I also used a tape cassette emulator on it to give it more of a lo-fi sound. Then this sound is a Logic stock preset. Which I'll show over here. It's the Hollow Pad preset on the Experimental Guitars folder. And it sounds like this. Then onto this sound, which is an ARP sound on the chorus, which sounds like this. Sounds like this without any effects. And I'll show the Serum patch for that. It uses these spectral wavetables, which I found in this folder on the wavetable section. It also has a sub to it with 3 octave. Neither of these have any unison, but this one's an octave higher. And these are the effects used on it. Use the hyper effect on Hyperdimension with the unison on 4, rate on 47%, detune 25, and the mix at 50. Also added a flanger, delay and reverb to it, as well as a filter over here. So that's that sound, and then for the mixing for it, all I did was filter it so it'd be more in the background. And also EQ'd it, removed all the low end that wasn't needed, and also the high end for some bracketing, and then boosted around 1k since that was where it was sitting, and I wanted it to cut through a bit more. So that sounds like this. Then this synth pad sound I also used in Hyde. It's the Alchemy Synth stock preset. And all I did to that was add a filter at 73%, so it'd be more in the background. For the EQ I just cut the low end and boosted the high end, since it's technically a bass sound, but I wasn't using it as one. And then also added some reverb to it, with the wet at 50 and the dry at 100. And that sounds like this. And this ARP bass, which is used on the verses and the intro, sounds like this. The ARP is just at eighth notes, and I'll show the serum patch for that. It's these kind of warped wavetables, the unison at 1 on this one, and the unison at 6 on this one. And it also has an automated filter to give it like a kind of pluck sound, and also has this small envelope just to add to the, also to make it sound like it's plucking. Because older synths in the 80s, which this is trying to emulate, they were trying to emulate real basses but didn't do a very good job of it, so they tried to make it sound like it was plucking. And then I used hyper on this, the rate at 40%, detune at 25, unison at 4, and the wet at 33%. There's also a compressor on it to kind of make it sound fatter. And then this EQ I wasn't using, and it also has a little bit of reverb on it, the size at just 3%. And then if I play it now, you'll see the just automated the cut off to make it sound like it's plucking. With the EQ, all I did was boost the lows and cut the highs, just because the high end wasn't really needed and I wanted it to be a bit more bassy. So then that in context sounds like this. Then this synth on the verse is from Vital. Also automated the modulation wheel on it to kind of open up and boost the high end as it goes into the chorus. And it also increases the distortion. It uses these spectral wavetables. It has chorus, distortion, compressor and EQ on it. It just removes gain from the low end, just because it's meant to be a bass sound, but I wasn't using it as one. Then chorus adds a few more voices to it. The mix is on 17%, and it uses a hard clip distortion with these settings. Then this bass on the chorus I've used in most of the other songs on this EP. It sounds like this. So this sound again, it's just a distorted saw wave with unison on it. And then for the EQ I just boosted the low end and cut the high end. And then this bass, which is on the outro, it's kind of like a synth bass that adds feedback to itself. So I'll show the sound I use for that. It's these analog sine waves. This one isn't being used. So it's tuned down 3 octaves. It also adds white noise to itself. And then it has a filter which has the cutoff automated on it. And then uses these effects. Uses hyper, EQ, distortion, and compressor. And then this is all automated. I got this sound from a Preset Share, which is a website where people upload synth patches for other people to use. Then this is just the Amen break. And then this breakbeat I used on the 3rd verse and the outro, which is taken from Sample Focus. Sounds like this. All I did to that was cut the mids and boosted the highs, since there was a lot of mid frequencies going on in this verse, and it was getting a bit crowded around there. Then this drum kit is made of one-shots from an 80s drum machine. All I did to that was use compression on it. There's quite a lot of compression on it because I wanted it to sound very punchy. The threshold's very low at -10 dB. The ratio is 1:6, which adds a lot of punch to drums. Makeup gain is at 2 decibels, just to add some saturation to it. The attack's very quick, 5.5 milliseconds, and the release is at 48. Then I also added some reverb to this with the wet at 25%. Then EQ, just boosted the low end around here, boosted the mids and cut the highs. Then the drums and the chorus are also one-shots from a modern metalcore pack, which sound like this. I also laid this with Logic's Smash Kit. Also uses this kick and snare, which is from the metalcore kit. So that's everything in Street Spirit.